Kia ora, everyone. We're here today with Sasha Green from CAB just to talk a little bit more about our renters' rights. So, I'm Shelby, I'm one of the Plunket Line nurses, and I'll hand it over to you, Sasha.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Kia ora. I'm Sasha Green. I work at the Citizens Advice Bureau National Office. I get to do all sorts of interesting things there, and one of the areas that I do some work in is around rental housing and people's rights and tenancies.
Well, that'd be wonderful to hear all about it because I'll get us started. So, what advice would you give us or give whānau when starting a tenancy?
Lots of things to think about there, aren't there? I guess when you're starting out, hopefully for starters, you've found a place that meets the needs of your whānau. Um, when you're getting started, there are a few costs associated with starting a tenancy. So a landlord can charge bond up to the equivalent of 4 weeks rent. And if you have a pet, we've now got this new pet bond as well. So that can be an additional 2 weeks rent if you've got agreement from your landlord to have a pet in the tenancy. You also generally pay 2 weeks rent in advance. So it's a big chunk of money. So that's something to be thinking through. There is actually help that you can get through work and income with a bond grant. And that's for people on a low income. You don't have to be getting a benefit. You might still be eligible for a bond grant. A bond grant is money that you'll owe and have to pay back, but you get to spread that out over time. So that can be really useful when you're talking about that big amount of money. And
Mm.
that's up to 4 weeks of rent money you can get for that. Um, when you go into a tenancy, it's really good to take lots of photos at the beginning and have a good record of the condition of the property when you first moved in. Um, Depending on how long you're there, things will change over time. But if it comes to future property inspections, when your landlord or property manager points something out, you've got a record and can go back and say, well, actually, that mark was already there. It's not us, or be able to, identify when there are things that might change over time. Um, I think those are some of the things to think about when you're getting started.
It's very interesting about the bond help because it is a large chunk of money, especially in today's climate with our financial state. It's not easy for whānau with little children to suddenly come up with this huge amount of money to suddenly try to put a
Yes.
roof over their head. So no, thank you for that. Um, and as we're starting to head into the colder months, would you be able to give our whānau and some families and tamariki some information about about Healthy Homes Act that we've heard?
Sure. Yeah, healthy homes standards are really important. That's been a positive move in our law over recent years. They came into force some time ago, and landlords have had quite a lot of time to get houses up to standard. So by 1 July last year, all residential tenancies should meet healthy homes standards, no excuses. So that's something to be aware of, that your landlord has had plenty of time and the house should now meet those standards. And they cover things like insulation, heating, drainage, ventilation, and one that's a very odd word that you never hear any other time, which is about moisture ingress. So that's more about water getting in rather than the drainage, which is the kind of water moving away from your
Mm.
property. So all of those standards should be met, and your landlord should provide a Healthy Homes compliance statement as part of your tenancy agreement. Um, those standards are really important for whānau, for tamariki, for young ones, because they are the things that make living in your home a a good experience. And when they're not, when those standards aren't met, it can have real impacts on families. And sadly, we do see people and children with respiratory issues because they're
Mm.
living in damp, mouldy, cold housing. So healthy home standards, landlord is responsible and should be meeting those standards. And if they don't, they can face penalties, and you can also take them to the tenancy tribunal to potentially get damages because of the effect that it has on you. So doing a good check of your home heading into winter. Mold is one of those really tricky ones where there is some element of making sure you're managing your own household and ventilating it and opening windows and things when you can. But if there's persistent mold that is really a reflection of the condition of the housing, then that's something your landlord needs to address.
Okay. And if you're not sure about if your house meets the standard or if whether or not you got that inspection certificate, is there a place you can go and look it up to see like the list you just talked about?
Yeah, sure. So, the compliance statement in your tenancy agreement should cover all those things, but there are also resources on the Tenancy Services website and our CAB website, and we also have another specific tenancy website called the Aratohu Tenant Advocacy. I'm sure you'll get all those links in the
Mm.
chat. But yeah, there's really detailed guidance on what those standards are and what
Mm.
you can expect and things to ask your landlord or property manager.
Mm. And you spend so much time in your home, it actually affects your health, and a lot of people don't realize that. And
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. It's so important.
Um, and going on from that, once you're in a tenancy, what can renters expect from the upkeep and day-to-day living?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the landlord is responsible for keeping the property in a reasonable state of repair. That means, if there are maintenance issues, it's the landlord's responsibility to address those. If it's, a leak, a cupboard door falling off, things that are about wear and tear that get to such a state that they really need to be, something might need to be replaced or fixed. That's the landlord's responsibility. For you as a tenant, your responsibility is to keep your home in a reasonably
Mm.
clean and tidy state. So that doesn't mean you have to have an immaculate home, and who of us do when we have young ones, we have children,
Mhm.
creating all different forms of chaos. Um, so reasonably clean and tidy. That's yeah, that's not about whether there are toys on the floor or not. That's about, that you are kind of wiping down surfaces and vacuuming and things like that. Some other things to think about in that ongoing space is um, just like for families, particularly when you do have young tamariki, um, you may want to do some things to make your home feel more secure and safe.
Mm.
And you have a right to uh, essentially you can request to your landlord that you about making reasonable modifications, and they are not allowed to unreasonably withhold their consent for that. So that's things like putting in a baby gate, or maybe you're wanting to secure some of the furniture to the wall to know that it's going to be safe and not topple over on your young one. In those situations, the tenant is responsible for paying for the work to be done, and also for returning it to substantially the same condition as it was before that work was done when it comes to the end of the tenancy. So that's something to think about, is just if you do put in a baby gate and you have to put some screws into the wall, it might be that when you leave, you could take the screws out and do some filling and matching the paint and covering that over.
Mm.
Um, yeah, and I guess just a general reflection too on the difference between fair wear and tear and damage when you live in your home. Um, living in your home will have an impact on your home over time, particularly again when you've got children,
Small
um,
children. Hmm.
small children. Yes, and some of that, the fair wear and tear, is just that reality of if you've got if you've got a young one crawling on the carpet, you've got people walking on the carpet. Over time, there'll be wear and tear on that. Some wear and tear is really the impact on your home of just living in your home. It's not, um, so it's kind of about your normal approach to, day to day life and just what happens over time when things get worn out. You aren't responsible for fair wear and tear. That's something your landlord is responsible for. And at the end of a tenancy, a landlord can't kind of say to you, oh, I can see there's wear in the carpet in that patch, if that's just part of you living in the home. Um,
Mm.
on the flip side, if there is damage and that, either you or your child is responsible for, um, the classic of getting the marker pen and drawing straight on the wall, or
On the
the,
carpet, with
the,
as
the
mine is
spills.
done.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
The spills and all those things that can happen. You the tenant generally will be responsible for damage that they or someone they're responsible for causes. But there are limits on how much a landlord can essentially charge you for the
Mm.
costs of repairing that damage. It's either the actual cost or if it's a minor thing. But if they're incurring some costs, they can only you're only able to be held liable up to 4 weeks rent or the landlord's insurance excess, whichever is the lower of the two, I think. So it's kind of putting a little bit of a cap on how much responsibility you have. And I would say in that space too, with everything that's about damage, maintenance issues, it's a good thing to keep a good relationship with your landlord or property manager if you can, and to communicate early if something goes wrong, so that you can you can talk that through. And in some situations, um, a landlord might be really happy for you to fix something yourself, or do your best job at trying to get the stain out of the carpet, and they might be, well, there's already other stains that were there. I'm going to replace the carpet next time the tenancy, next
Mm.
time the tenancy changes over, so it's no problem. So it's good to have those conversations, and in some cases that will go really well. And in other situations where you have problems with your landlord, you might have to consider how you escalate issues. So going back to that issue of maintenance, if a landlord isn't dealing with something, if there is a failure to meet healthy home standards or a leak dripping into your child's bedroom, um, you can take that approach of trying to communicate well, but then put it in writing. If the landlord doesn't do anything about it, you can send them a 14-day notice to remedy the breach of the tenancy agreements. It's basically giving them 14 days to fix things, and then if they don't do that, that's essentially your basis then to take them to the tenancy tribunal. It's like
Mm.
giving them a chance to fix things, and if they don't, you can go to the tenancy tribunal to get you can get mediation there, but also the tenancy tribunal can ultimately make a decision about what needs to happen.
Mm. It's amazing that there's so many options out there for whānaus, because it can be scary when you are trying to get something right for your family, but then you're getting the pushback, but you don't know where to go and what to do. So it's really nice that you've got those options, as well as being able to make your home safe, because as many parents will know, once you reach that crawling stage and that pulling to stand stage, oh, it's game over.
Oh
You
yeah, it's
safety
all
and,
on.
and yep, and injury prevention is so important, and you'll find a lot of that on our website on Plunket, or giving us a call, Plunket line. But But interesting enough, back to what you were talking before, what is it like for when landlords come around for inspections? So you talked about the wear and tear and the expectations, but now
Mhm.
when can we expect those inspections actually coming into place?
Yeah. So you would generally, there'll be that inspection at the beginning of the tenancy. Then from there on, landlords and property managers will have different approaches about how often they want to carry out a property inspection. But they do have to give at least 48 hours notice that they're coming for a property inspection. The law allows them quite a lot of flexibility about when they do that. It can basically be from 8 a.m. till 7 p.m. any day of the week, as long as they've given you that notice and you don't even have to be there, like they could still go ahead if you're not there. I think, again, for young families, communication's really key. You don't want the landlord coming around where you're finally settling your baby to sleep who's got reflux and been crying all night or whatever it might be. So just trying to have some good communication so that that works with your schedule as much as you
Mm.
can. Um, if it's a maintenance issue, so if you've kind of said there's this leak and I want you to fix it, they just need to give 24 hours notice for coming and attending to a maintenance issue. Um, Alongside that is the right that tenants have to um, quiet enjoyment of their home, peace and quiet enjoyment of their home. So if a landlord is coming around a lot or coming around saying, I'm not doing an inspection, I'm just checking on the garden, or I'm, whatever it might be, there can be that can step into that space of saying, well, they're actually interfering with your peace and reasonable enjoyment of your home,
Mm.
which is one of your rights under the tenancy. So there's kind of some boundaries there, and if you've got questions about that, that's absolutely something you could check in with your local CAB about and talk through your rights.
Yeah, and it's very important to have that time to bond with your PP, especially at the beginning. And the last thing you want to do is constantly have the fear of the background that someone's going to rock up at your front door when you've, like you
Uh,
said, you've just got them to sleep,
mm,
and you've been up all night. So yeah, no, it's good to
yeah,
know that. Um, with that, another common thing whānaus encounter is changes to the initial agreement or the initial contract, such as the rent increases. What are the rules around this?
sure. So a, a landlord can only increase the rent once in every 12-month period. So there needs to be a year since the previous rent
Mm.
increase. It is a challenging one in terms of people trying to say, I mean, we for a long time have seen people come to us saying, I can't afford my rent. My landlord's just put the rent up. This is unreasonable. Um, Basically, landlords can charge rent according to what the market is. So um, if similar properties in your neighborhood are being rented out at about the same price, then they can kind of match that. At the
Mm.
moment, they say it's a renter's market, and that there's in some parts of the country there's a little bit of a oversupply of rental housing. So sometimes you can negotiate a bit with your landlord. Um, that said, I mean, it's a tricky one because I think often you know, you're dealing sometimes with, uh, the good properties, the rent, they can justify it, and it might be the ones that
Mm.
aren't so great where you've got more room to move, but they might not be the places you wanna be in. Um
Yeah.
They also have the landlord has to give you 60 days notice of a rent increase, so you get, plenty of warning, to gear up for that increased cost.
And it can be hard facing an increased cost. So from that, something we're sure people also would like to know is more about if they want to end the tenancy or if things kind of go a little bit wonky and how to go about that.
Yes, yep, good point. So one thing I didn't mention at the beginning, which is probably a good thing to clarify, is that there are essentially two different types of tenancies. One is a periodic tenancy, which just
Mm,
means it's ongoing. It doesn't have an end date. It's um, it goes until notice is given to end it. And in that situation, a tenant can give 21 days notice that they want to end the tenancy. Um, the landlord is also able to end the tenancy. We had a short period of time, a few years, where landlords couldn't give notice unless they had a lawful reason, but the law changed again, and currently a landlord can give notice without any reason. They have to give you 90 days. So you've sort of got
mm,
3 months warning. They can also end the tenancy earlier if they've got a whānau member coming to live in the property, or they're selling the property with vacant possession. So in those situations, they can give 42 days notice, I think. Yep. But otherwise 90 days. So that's a periodic ongoing tenancy.
mm,
Um, if you're in a fixed term tenancy, it's much harder to exit early. So fixed term tenancy is all about giving people certainty about how long the tenancy will last for, and you as a tenant have that certainty, as in a landlord can't just kick you out, but you're also then kind of bound to be responsible for paying the rent for that whole period. There are ways you can get out based on hardship. If you've had a change in circumstances that's quite significantly going to impact your ability to stay in that tenancy. Um, you can also exit a fixed term tenancy by agreement with the landlord. And often that's about um, them wanting you to find new tenants to replace you, or
mm,
essentially kind of agreeing with them that they'll find new tenants and you will cover certain costs related to that process. So it's just something to be aware of. It can be tricky to get out of a fixed term tenancy early. Another really important thing to be aware of is in situations where a tenant or a whānau member has experienced family violence in the tenancy or during their tenancy, they can withdraw from the tenancy with just 2 days' notice. So that's a
okay.
really important law that came in recent years to just make sure that if people are in that situation where um, staying in the tenancy is going to impact on their safety, they have a mechanism for being able to leave really quickly without that added
Mm,
burden of the cost of ongoing rent.
mm. That's such a good protective factor to have, especially in New Zealand. And if anyone wants to talk about family violence or domestic violence, or would like to just have a chat about that, there's always Plunket line to call, or a cab as well. They can lead you to the right places.
Mhm.
But no, thank you so much, Sasha, for everything that you've told us today. It's been very fascinating learning about it. Is there anything you'd like to share lastly, or any other insights or advice for whānau?
I think probably just reinforcing what you've said, Shelby, that if you have questions, just reach out for assistance, for help. We have 80 CAB sites around the country, and we also have things like live chat on our website. So, um, you can get in touch, and we will do our best to make sure you know what your rights are and help you with some next steps.
Perfect. Now, we have a question if you're up for it. Melody has asked if your windows get soaking wet in the winter, is that acceptable? As landlord won't fix and the house has healthy homes in upstairs second floor only.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sounds like, yeah, it is a tough one. I think, it's sounding like maybe that's condensation related rather than if it
Mm,
was moisture getting in through gaps, that might be a different issue and more questionable whether it does meet healthy home standards. But, getting you know, condensation and stuff is it's really tricky because you've got that combination of heaters and not necessarily wanting to have all your windows
Yes.
open. Um, I think that, I mean, this is kind of going for a more practical response. I would maybe look at whether you have anyone in your community that does sort of healthy homes assessments that could come and give you some guidance about how to manage it, and potentially also give you feedback if they think it is an issue to do with the house
Mm.
itself and the need for ventilation. Um, but yeah, you know, feel free to come and check in with someone at CAB to talk it through in a bit more detail.
You have a chat with their local cab. Yeah,
Yeah.
CAB. Well, thank you so much, Sasha, for this chat as kororo. It was lovely having you with us and all your inside information. I've definitely learned a lot. Is there anything else you want to say before we say goodnight and let everyone pop their little tamariki to bed?
No, that's great. Thanks so much for the opportunity, Shelby, and your team to come and share with you.
No, thank you. And